We will talk about business strategies, marketing tips, sales techniques, administration, mindset, and growth from someone who has years of experience in the business and finance world. Today, we're honored to have Brian Kelly with us. Brian is a well-known CEO advisor, strategist, and finance expert who has dedicated over 4 decades to guiding small businesses and nonprofits in the San Francisco Bay Area. With a wealth of experience in strategic planning, marketing, financial management, and risk analysis, Brian's insights are invaluable. Join me in welcoming Brian Kelly to the podcast. Brian, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hi there, I'm Brian Kelly. I'm in Napa, and I work with about 24 small businesses, helping them grow. And that includes not only revenue and sales, but people and production and the whole, so that they can take their company to the next level and protect against things that may come at them.
Awesome. And can you share a bit about your journey and what initially drew you in the field of business consulting and finance?
I worked for a few banks, actually, over my last 50 years. Started with Bank of America as a teller, but moved my way through and ultimately became a CEO of a couple different banks. And when you're a CEO of a bank, people come in, they don't come to you for loans. You've got loan officers, you've got people to handle the deposits, but they come and sit down at your desk kind of like a father confessor and say, I got this business problem. How do I solve it? And so I had probably good 30 years of that, helping these small businesses that come in with all sorts of issues and helping them with solutions and getting them aligned with people that would help them go. So I did that. I left banking about 12 years ago and continued essentially the same thing, but doing it on my own. And it's been a lot of fun.
What's the first step a small business or someone just starting out should do with the bank? So like, what do you recommend them first starting out? Because I remember when we started, a big problem was the credit cards. When we had just signed up with the bank, we had an issue with the credit limit. We were running $30,000 a month easily. Our limit was, I think, like $15,000, and we went to the bank and said, "Hey, can you guys increase this limit because we're running through this like too easily here?"
Sure. And steer me if I'm going a little off course, but what's important here is that the bank has confidence in you, that you're running a business and you've got a good sense. People think that banks want to see all these financial statements and numbers and everything else. The bank are less concerned about the actual sheet of paper. They're more concerned that you have a plan, that you've got a sense of direction, you've got a plan, you know where you're going, how you're going to take yourself there, and then how to integrate the bank into that. So if you're going into the bank or anywhere, I would say, what is your plan? What are you attempting to do? So what is your mission? What are you about? What's your vision? Where are you going with this plan? And then you've got this plan, and people think, oh, let's make a 3-year strategic plan. I'm saying, start with 1 year. How are you going to get from here to there? What are you attempting to achieve in the next year? And then what resources do you have, people, money, otherwise, to achieve it? So I'm coming back to your question, which is, how do I get through a credit card issue or something like that with a bank? You've got to exude to the bank that you've got a sense of direction, where you're going, and you've got the resources to deliver on that. So that then, okay, I want to move forward. I need this kind of a credit limit, or I need this kind of a loan, or I've got this sort of a bank product that I need. You've got a plan well thought out in your head and frankly articulated on paper that says, here's the direction I'm going. This is what I need. And then you can show that to a banker, and that's going to be a much better selling point than you just sitting there spouting off for 5 minutes about, hey, I need a $10,000 increase. You know, you want to show the bank that you know what you're doing and you've got a plan and you're going to execute on that plan.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. On your path to your career and just diving into this business world, did you have any mentors that helped you get to where you ended up in life or where you're at now?
Yes, I had quite a few mentors that helped me through. So one of my mentors was Queen of the Valley Hospital. And I was chosen in 1990 to be on the board of Queen of the Valley Hospital, the board of the trustees that runs the hospital. And the last 2 years of which I was chair of the hospital. When you're on that hospital board, I probably spent 40 hours a year training in how to run a business, how to do strategic planning, how to understand what a mission's about, what a vision's about, what values stand for in your company, and had a good sense of the backbone. I would call those the backbone of a business. So be it somebody the size of Queen of the Valley Hospital or a small business, that you've got a mission about what you're about, a vision where you're going, and you've got values that you stand for. And many mentors taught me that, not only the Queen of the Valley Hospital, but other mentors. If you have that, then you can put together some sort of a plan. People call it a business plan. They get all nervous about a business plan. A business plan could be one page, but it's what are you attempting to achieve? And I've said this before, but what are you attempting to achieve? And then what resources do you have, and how are you going to get there? And the various mentors that I had, I can think back to, the 80s, frankly. I had a number of mentors that helped me get to where I was.
That's interesting. Brian, now that you mentioned business plan, I remember when we first started, we didn't come up with the business plan. We just hit the ground running. And it wasn't until maybe a year in and we're like, okay, we need a business plan. There's too many things happening. We really need to figure out where we're going to go, how we're going to do it, and what's the overall goal of this. Because the goal was to get in, make some money, help people out, do what we could with the resources we had. But once we started going to the banks, then it made sense that you needed that business plan in writing to make sure. And that goes back to, I think, the banks having confidence in you and being prepared with that business plan.
Another backbone to a business plan, I talked about having a good mission, vision, and values. The other piece is something called SWOTs, which are you're analyzing your strengths, your weaknesses, what opportunities you have, and what threats. And as I mentioned earlier, it's about the bank having confidence in you. So if you can go into the bank and you tell them, hey, these are my strengths and here's what I'm going to leverage, and these are my weaknesses, but here's how I'm going to protect myself. These are the threats coming down the road, but this is how I'm going to get out of the way. And these are the opportunities that I'm going to take advantage of. And you put those together. It might be a list of 4 or 5 each that you put down, and you incorporate those because it's that thought process you're going to incorporate into your business plan. Here's how I'm going to get there. Here's how I'm going to succeed. And here's how I'm going to protect myself.
What would you say your proudest moment in your career is? What is a big achievement you've achieved that you're just like, I'm super happy I was able to do this?
There are a number of them. I took over a bank that was not doing well and turned it around and got it moving and sold it a number of years later with a good, healthy increase, a very, very good bank. Another bank that we started, and then 2008 hit in the recession, and it cratered. But we were able to pick ourselves back up, and I really worked with all the employees to make sure they were trained and that they had the skill sets they needed to move forward. And so working with people, I think, in various ways, I think is probably one of the proudest things that I have, is helping people get to the next level. So not only do I help businesses get to the next level, but it's the people that are involved in it as well.
How would you assess the growth potential of a small business if you're analyzing a business before you start working with them to help them go to the next level? What's the first couple of things you look at for potential and growth and where they could end up?
There's a number of things. We can spend a lot of time on this. First of all is making sure that I'm dealing with someone who's got their eyes open, their ears open, and they're willing to listen. Sometimes I talk to people and they've got everything ironed out. Here's what I'm going to do, but they don't want to take new ideas. They don't want to, and so they need to be open to ideas. What can they do? How can they achieve this better? Okay, so I would say that's number one, is having an openness. And the second is, have they thought through what they're attempting to do? I'm going to digress a second, but when people talk about marketing, what's marketing? And people will say, well, I've got a website. That's marketing. Well, that's one of 22 various facets of marketing. You've got to open your ears, open your eyes, and say, okay, what else is there? And each area of business has the same thing. People zero in and think, okay, I've got production down. This is the one thing. Well, there's a whole bunch of avenues. What's the supply line like? What are various ways that, what are the pricing? And so it's people that are being open and opening to the various facets. Now, I'm beginning to talk a little bit about, as I'm doing a business plan, one of the things I want to look at is, okay, what's their overall strategy? They want to grow to this level. Okay, but tell me about your marketing. Tell me about your sales. What people do you have? What skills do you have? Tell me about how the production's going to work. How are you going to exude this product? What kind of financial information do you have? Doesn't mean you have to have a lot of money, but you've got a plan that's put together. Tell me about your human resource plan. Tell me about the people that you've got that are going to take you to this level. And nowadays, it's very, very important to pay attention to people, pay attention to the laws that surround protecting employees and understanding those. And then you talk to them about risk management. Have they thought, what can go wrong? And how do we protect ourselves about that? And so it comes back to, and probably the theme I would have for the whole discussion today is planning, that you have a good plan. It doesn't have to be this 30-page General Motors business plan. It can be a one-pager, but you've thought through each of the facets of the business, and you're open to ideas, open to listening, and then carrying that forward.
I 100% agree with that. Being open-minded is huge. It just allows you to see things. You don't have anything that's blocking you. You're just open to all ideas, all mindsets. So you can, I think the goal for me is to make sure that another idea can be better than mine. So that's something I practice, being open-minded, because I don't want to be right. I want to do what's truthful, right, not do what I think's right.
And all those words come in: truthful, fair. Your integrity is a very important piece. This comes back when I sort of glossed over it, but I talked about having a mission, which is what you're about, a vision where you're going. The third one I mentioned that I glossed over was values. What are the values of your business? What do you want to hang on the wall and say, this is what we stand for? And it is integrity, it's trust, those various things, because that's what will carry you forward. That's going to be a backbone to your business. These others are words, but if you people, and that's something you want your employees to think about. What does this business stand for, and what's behind us?
And that brings me to a company culture. That's something we're working on right now, how to have the proper culture of high performers. And that's who we want to have in our company. Everyone there, we'd like to make sure they're high performing and they're on top of everything. And, anyone that doesn't align with that probably shouldn't be working with us.
That's a valid point. And that's where I call that values. So if you could pinpoint maybe 4 or 5 values that this is what our company stands for, this is what we're about, and this is, if you're going to work for us, we expect you to stand behind these values. And that's a strong part of the culture.
When you were first starting out in your consulting career, did you ever feel like, wow, maybe I don't have enough skills to help this person go to the next level? Or did you ever feel that you didn't have enough knowledge to help that person go to the next, whether it was, financially or expanding or whatever it was?
Sure. Well, I'm probably going to brag a little bit in that, I got my MBA. I went back 20 years and updated my MBA. So I took a lot of coursework. I continue to go to Berkeley now and taking coursework on running a business and the types of things. But that's sort of my own learning. The thing that probably helped me most is that over my last 40 years or so, I was heavily involved in the community. I was involved from a leadership perspective with nonprofits, the Chamber of Commerce, I mentioned the hospital, other ones. But I met a number of people, hundreds of people over this period. And when you talk about, was I nervous? Yes, there's a little bit. We're always nervous about doing something. But I had a lot of people in just the Napa community that I could lean on for support and learn from. And I still use those. People just calling people up and saying, hey, I need a better idea this way, or I need somebody to help with this. And it's leaning on your fellow business person, your fellow, not just even business. It can be nonprofit, it can be education, but learning to lean on other people to give you ideas and admitting, as you said earlier, you may not have the best idea, and to reach out to people. And that's what saves me from being overly nervous, because I know there's a whole community out there that's going to help us grow.
How do you encourage self-belief and confidence in the CEOs and executive teams you work with?
Part of it is, we talked about, is having a sense of values so that you've got something to lean back on, trust, integrity, and the like. Another one is that they're open to discussion. They have good communication with their employees as well as their customers, so that then they've got a sense of what it's about. You mentioned listening. That's going to be an important piece. And these almost sound like the Boy Scout, the 12 things that you stretch out for a Boy Scout. I can't remember them all. Trustworthy and all of that are in there. But it's the same type of thing, that you're a whole person. You're rounded. You've got these experiences. You've got these strengths, and you're going to utilize those. And you're not going to have all of them, but that you're going to recognize what you have and you're going to recognize what you don't have and then carry that forward. And I think recognizing your strengths and weaknesses and opportunities is a way to build that self-confidence.
What's a big issue you see dealing with CEOs and executives to change? I feel like change is something most people do not like to do. It's something that's just when something's going a certain way, it's really hard to stop doing that to go a different way because you feel like, I don't know if that's the best path or if it'll deliver the same results or better results. So it's a little bit of scaredness, risk.
It is risk. There's a saying, and I'm not going to think of it perfectly right now, but it's sort of along the lines, and this has kind of been one of my mantra that I use, that is, if it's not broke, break it. And a lot of people say, if it's not broke, then I'm going to leave it the way it is, as you just said. And I'm saying, no, break it. Let's break it apart and see if there's another way to do things. So I'm constantly thinking, is there another way to do this? And so, as I say, going back to my mantra, if it's not broke, then go ahead and break it. And especially if it's running well and everything's great, how can we make this better? And not only my own head, but talking to employees, talking to customers. Hey, how can I deliver this product better? How can I do this better? And I think that's one way to answer that question.
What common traits do you see in business owners and executives you work with that sets them apart from the average or low performing executives or CEOs?
Right. I have to think about that one for a second. Well, one of them is that they work hard. You know, people that think they can go in and run a business and work 40 hours a week and, 7-hour days and that type of thing. No, you're going to work hard. You're going to have a lot of hours because there's two things you have to do in running the business. And I hope I can make sure I come back to your question. Many people think that they're working on the business. They're working in the business. They're so buried. They're working in the business and they got this, and this, and they don't have time to work on the business, which is, how do I take this business forward? And so part of it is making sure that you take a certain amount of time, might be 2 hours a week, that you work on the business to carry this forward. And then your question again was?
What traits or what do you see in high-performing executives versus lower?
So one is they're working hard. They're not afraid to put in a good week's worth. Two is they spend a certain amount of time working on the business, not just in. I'm working with a company right now. They're a $6 million contractor, and they've got a specialty product. They're really good. And I'm trying to get them to put together a plan, put together a forecast. And they're so busy with the work, they don't have time to get to it. And I say, you're not going to be here tomorrow if you don't plan on how you're going to get there. And so part of it is a good, they work hard. They work on the business as well as in the business. One of the things that helped me is I started as a teller, and I always go back to, I think one of the reasons I really understood banking is I did every job all the way up the line. So when I got to be CEO, I'd done every job and I really understood it. So it's understanding your business. Understanding doesn't mean you have to know everything, but you have to understand it. So I think that's a trait, being open to listening. The other is getting out in the world. I spend an hour a day of networking. Now, some people, oh, that's a bad word, and what it is. All that is understanding your community, understanding everything around you. What is community? Community is your employees. Community is competition. Your people that are out there doing the same thing. Understanding how they do their world and coming back. Years ago, some 30 years ago, I was working with the wine industry and banking, and I noticed that the owners got together on a quarterly basis. So all the winery owners got together and exchanged ideas. And the winemakers got together. But the CFOs didn't talk to each other. Oh, no, we can't talk to the CFOs because then it would be illegal and all this sort of stuff. And I said, baloney, you all have insurance issues. You could get together and talk about insurance. You all have planning issues. You don't have to talk about what you're going to do. And so we started this thing called the Napa Valley Winery Financial Group. And it's still going today, which is to have CEOs or CFOs chief financial officers get together and talk about what's going on in their business. So it's doing these various things that and it might all come back under networking, which is building your network of people out there that can help you. Don't try and do it on your own. If you try and do everything on your own, you're not going to make it. So beg, borrow, steal, use every contact that you have to take your business to the next level.
Super interesting. Well, first of all, you need to introduce me to that group so I can get to know some of these business owners. I'd love to connect.
I'll tell you one secret about the group. We started it, the bank started it, right? And we got 30, 40 wineries, and there's more. But then more bankers joined, and the insurance people joined, and all these people joined, and the winery people threw them all out. They said, we want to get together ourselves. We don't want to have people in here trying to sell us all the time. Yeah. We want to talk amongst ourselves. So the group, it's not a closed group, but they really focus on themselves and don't want to have a whole bunch of people come in. So on one hand, yeah, you want to get to know that group, but I understand what you're saying.
I mean, it's understandable. You want to keep it strategic and within the industry itself.
Right.
So one thing that you said that I realized was working on the business versus in the business. And recently we went too hard working on the business that we started seeing our sales go down. Okay, we're making money, we're selling, we're taking care of clients, and then we're like, let's take a step back and work on the business for a while. And all of a sudden our sales start going down, and we're like, all right, we need to get back to the
yes and no. I would agree with that from a number of ways to discuss this. And I think that's a really key point. I'm glad you brought it up. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care how busy you are. I don't care what position you have. You're always selling. I joined banking over 50 years ago because I didn't want to sell. I had a brother who sold life insurance. I said, I am not going to be a salesman. I'm going to go to work in a bank. I'm good at math. I can do this. And a number of years later, probably 20 years later, I realized, wait a second, I'm selling every day. That's what I'm doing. But the point I'm coming back to, you can get very busy. You're working, whether you're working in the business or on the business. The one thing you always should be doing is working on clients, working on prospects, because you don't get a prospect one day and they walk in your door the next day. It takes weeks. It might take months for you to sell somebody and buying your product, whatever your product is. So you always want to spend a certain amount of time. Just like I said, you want to spend a certain amount of time networking. You want to spend a certain amount of time working on the business. You want to spend a certain amount of time, and frankly, I'd say a minimum, even if you're a CEO, of an hour a day of outreach to develop relationships and sell. And so I don't care how busy you are, if you're not planning for the future. It reminds me, especially, in your industry, it's a good example. You work really hard, you're slammed with all these clients and projects, you got to do these projects, but then all of a sudden one day you wake up and the projects are all done and you don't have any new clients. So you always have to be working on the new clients to fill in when you finish a project. And that's very key. Now, I know I've talked about you got to do this and you got to do that. How come there's only 24 hours in a day? How are you going to do it? Well, it is parsing. It's planning your time. It's parsing it out. But part of it is a certain amount of time each week you're going to dedicate to building your network. A certain amount of time each week you're going to devote to future selling. And if you're a CEO, you may not be doing the near term. You might be doing projects that you're going to do a month or two out. But you've got to be working on those every week and make sure. And to me, it's easiest to plan on a weekly basis. You might want to do daily, you might want to do monthly, but a weekly basis. Okay, have I built my network good this week? Have I built a good cadre of potential clients this week? And you want to track it. You want at the end of the week, at some point, you can do weekly, monthly, however, but at the end of the week, it's me, is I sit down and say, okay, what did I do this week? Did I accomplish these basic tenets to running my business? And you always want to look back and just say, have I done the basics in taking my business to the next level? And what are those basics? And selling is a key part of it. Planning is a key part of it. Networking is a key part of it. And if you're a CEO or you're running a business, you want to make sure you're doing each of these things.
And that reminds me of KPIs. You're basically setting KPIs for yourself to check at the end of the week. Did I reach this? Did I talk to this many people? Did I accomplish X, Y, Z?
KPIs. I'm working with a few businesses on KPIs. KPIs are key performance indicators. They tell you how well you're doing and how well you've done. Okay. I'm having an issue with a few of my clients right now because they're really focusing on KPIs and how well they did this and how many of this they did and how many of that they did. And I've got them to change the focus. I've got to get them to change the focus a little bit for the future. I'm saying, okay, KPIs, okay, but they're all history. Let's plan the future. What are you going to do next week? And how are you going to increase your business next week? And so results tell you what happened. It's important to know your results. It's important to measure your results. But I want businesses to start measuring effort. What are they doing to build the future? Now, that's expanding your brand. It's improving your marketing. It's improving your contacts with prospects. But when you're doing your KPIs, how many of your KPIs are, I touched 4 new potential clients this week, and I went out and met in these types of mixers or something like that to develop clients. You may not get a home run every time, but you can say, as I see you at the network, at the chamber, I went to the chamber this week and I called 4 people that might be businesses this week. So I want to start measuring effort. I mean, like I say, I don't want to negate KPIs. They're good. They're important for you to know what happened, but they're history. And I want to know the future because it's the future that's going to grow my business. History is not going to grow my business. It's the future and what you're doing. And so if you could set up in your business or whoever is listening, 3 or 4 future KPIs. What are the things you're going to do this coming week that are going to help you build prospects, expand your business, and get people to know about you?
Setting KPIs was like that kind of stick that you're reaching for every month or quarter or year. And like you said, why would you focus on the past when you can put those KPIs to help you push you forward into the future and reach higher levels of sales, of growth, of whatever you set your KPIs for?
Now you get me thinking about something else. And along the same lines, KPIs aren't only financial. What are you doing to develop your people? What are you doing to develop your market? So the various pieces of your business, training should be a key part of growth. Do you have your people trained? Do you need more people? What are you doing to develop the team that you can pass the work off to? So KPIs shouldn't just be, hey, we sold many of these widgets and we hit this dollar amount, but it's each facet of running the business and make sure that you're developing and growing the whole business rather than just one quarter.
What would you recommend, or what advice do you have for someone that's their sales are not where they should be or where they want them to be? If their sales are just very mediocre and they just want to double or triple that number, what would you recommend them start doing?
Well, the first thing is it realistic? And whether it's how many widgets you produce and sell or how many contracts you do, what's your competition doing? What's realistic in the market I'm talking about? So don't set unrealistic goals for yourself. Let's be realistic in how we can do this. A second piece is the business you have, is it profitable? Are you operating at a profitable level for the business? Is your gross margin correct? Is your profitability, the various ratios together? What's wrong? What are you trying to change? Because, and I'll come back to your question, but many people are thinking, oh, I think I need to increase this. Well, they should look. Maybe they should reduce some of their costs. Maybe they should do some other things. So it's really understanding your business and then coming back to, okay, the real issue is I need 2 more customers a week. Okay. Then we say, okay, let's boil this down, simplify. How do I get 2 more customers a week? If I had 2 more customers that did this, then I could take, because then that would generate so much profit. I have one client right now. They do about $1 million in sales. They're a good client, but they're sort of at break even. But the interesting thing is all of the expenses are covered. So if they went out and hired a new client, hired a new employee that was a professional in their world, that employee would almost be 100% of profit. Because the cost, there's no cost to them other than their salary. There's no other cost. They don't need any more space. They don't need to rent more space. They've got room. They've got everything covered. All they need to do is if that employee costs them $50 an hour and they're charging clients $100 an hour, that $50 of profit goes right to the bottom line. So I may get long-winded here, but what I'm trying to do is figure out what you need to go there and make sure that that's what you want. Just, I need some more sales. Well, what kind of sales? What's it going to cost you to have those sales? What's going to grow? and then we figure out how to get there, various pieces of it, and then going forward.
What do you think about visionaries versus doers, like just get shit done guys? Like I feel like there's always those two in business, and you can spot who the visionary is and who the just get stuff done is.
You need both. You need both. As a matter of fact, in the corporate world, there's something called a CEO and another area called COO. The CEO is the Chief Executive Officer. He's a strategist. He's a thinker. He might be your top salesperson, not so much in widgets, but in meeting the contact and that type of thing. And the COO, the Chief Operating Officer, is to get it done, making sure that everything's done according to Hoyle legally, and that they're getting the product out the door at the time, and those contract projects are getting done on time and that type of thing. So you need both. And with small business, that's difficult because you don't have a lot of money to just have a CEO and a COO. But you should figure out very quickly, as you're defining your org chart, who's going to be the visionary and who's going to be the one that gets it done. And you may need help. You may need outside people. I mean, we haven't talked about that yet, but sometimes everybody's not necessarily working for the company, but they're affiliated with the company and helping you.
And that goes to consultants. That's where I remember when we were in the middle of figuring our organization chart and who's going to do what and job roles and descriptions. That's why we reached out to you. We were like, you know what? We're stuck. We're at a point where we need experts to tell us how to set this up. What are some strategies we can do? You know, how to determine who does what and what happens next.
Right. And you want to make sure they're ingrained in your culture. Every employee is ingrained in your culture, understands it, believes in it, and helps execute it. And then they have a place. What is their place? What is their value to you? I've got a number of companies that have too many employees in the wrong area. I think there's books that are written about getting people on the bus is one thing, but making sure they're in the right seats. Is that Good to Great, I think, is that book by Collins. But making sure they're in the right seat on the bus, and they're optimizing their skill set to carry your company forward with you. And sometimes people aren't in the right seat, and you've got to recognize that and say, okay, how does this org chart work? Does that help?
Oh, yeah, definitely. What do you think about emotion versus strategy in business? Like, how do you differentiate those two?
I think everybody should have a little bit of emotion. That's your inner core in a way. That's where your strength comes from to carry it forward. You've got to be emotional about what you're trying to do. Whether you get up in the morning and go to work at, whether it's McDonald's or whatever it is, you want to have some emotion, some feeling about where you're going to go. So I think that's good. And that comes back to culture. You know, you want to make sure that emotion that people are emulating comes back to the culture that you're trying to build your company around. And so it's important that everybody have a little bit of emotion. Now, the higher level you are and the more closer you are to the CEO, the more you're going to have than the person that is, the cashier at something. But everybody's going to have a little bit of emotion. I made that clear from my days as a teller, going back to and managing tellers, is I want everybody to have a certain amount of emotion. And I used to tell people, even in the teller world, I wanted them to spend a certain amount of time of each week working on the business. And they go, I don't have any control. You do. I don't care if you go for a walk, if you do a break, whatever it is. Take a certain amount of time and say, what can I do better? How can I take this to the next level? So the emotion is, I think, something part of it. Strategy is a plan. Strategy is how you're going to get there. And so maybe that's the numeric side. Maybe that's the tangible side of emotion. And you need a good strategy. I mean, we talked earlier about strategy and the various ways to develop it, and we can spend more time on that, a lot more time on that. But in any case, strategy is developing a plan. It's having a vision of where you're going. People will follow you to the ends of the earth if you give them a roadmap. So you need to tell them, here's where we're going. Here's our vision. This is where we're going. And this is how I see the roadmap on how we're going to get there, and then getting everybody to buy into it. So that's the strategy side. And so I come back to your question. I think everybody should have a little emotion, and every business should have some form of strategy.
100% agree. We've been implementing that a lot. Just feel like we got too focused on just working, getting money, helping clients. And we just lacked on the emotional side. So as we implemented a little more emotion and caring and trying to help understand people, and that led into communication.
Mm-hmm.
How well do you communicate, and how important, and what do you recommend for communication with the owners and their staff?
Well, communication, what is communication? It's a two-way understanding of some issue, some idea. And communication needs to be two-way, understood with your client, your customer, with your employee, with your supplier, to make sure you're all on the same level. And I'm a very strong fan that there's different types of communication. There's verbal, there's tactile, there's touching, there's listening, there's reading, there's visual. And I'm a fan that not everybody has their strength in one of those or all of those. Usually they have their strength in one, but not all. Not everybody is a good listener. Not everybody is really good at reading and visual. Not everybody is good touching and that type of thing. So I implore small business owners to employ multiple forms of communication. So that when I was running our business, we had a newsletter. Didn't need to be long, but it was a newsletter. So that when we had a meeting, or another example is we had a meeting, I made sure somebody took minutes and passed the minutes around, because I want to make sure they heard what was said and what got written down. So writing is very important, but audio is very important. Visual is very important. You want to use all forms of communication, even tactical communications, so that you make sure that the message got across and is understood. And so I'm a strong fan of meetings having brief minutes. They don't need to be lengthy. They can be 6 bullets. This is what was discussed and this is what was decided. But then everybody walking around, you know that everybody in that meeting heard what you were saying. Because otherwise, small businesses have these meetings, people get up and leave, nothing happens, and people think, oh, and I knew what I said it. Well, how do you know they understood? Whereas if you put it in writing, pass it around, and get feedback, then you'll know. So communication is very key. And as I say, I use multiple forms of communication to make sure that my points got across. That's why a written business plan is important. And up on the wall, everybody to see, even the clients, doesn't matter. What are you trying to do that's up there that reminds everybody every day, this is what we're trying to do?
That's interesting. One of the biggest things I realized in communication was listening, and how little people listen when you communicate with each other. And I started doing a lot of research on communication and how to improve my communication, how to understand people better, and how to listen. And now I'm like hyper aware of this. So when I'm out in public, when I'm talking to people, I'm super hyper focused on, did they understand what I said? Did I understand what they asked?
So how do you check on that?
So what I like to do is, and I'm just practicing this now, I like to really just listen and be super focused on what the person's saying, and then reiterate if whatever I got out of what they said is what they meant.
Right.
So for example, if you tell me something about XYZ, I'll say, so what I'm hearing you say is XYZ, does that sound right? Or is that aligned with what you just said?
Right.
And then they'll say yes or no. Then you can respond back with the proper response, versus when you just talk and then I just respond back.
Right. No, you want to question. You want to question the whole thing all the way around, both sides of the conversation, whether it's in meetings or whether it's individual. What did you understand by what I just said? That type of a question, or how would you, don't always give them the answer. Don't always repeat what you're saying. Listen. It comes back to your point about listening. Ask them a question and have them explain what they heard and the direction we're going in. Okay, what are we going to try and do next week? How are we going to do that? And getting them to bring it back to you, that shows that they were a good listener or not. So very good point. I appreciate what you're saying.
And also I realized is if people don't really listen to you, is that something you're doing wrong? Or is it something that, because it could be both. It could be the person's not good at listening or communicating well, but it can also be that you're maybe not engaging enough or interesting the person you're talking with. What do you think about that?
You're making a very valid point, and I appreciate that. It comes back to the point I made that some people are better listeners, some people are better verbally, some people are better visually. So I try to incorporate in my communication multiple ways of communication. If I'm going to go to a meeting, for instance, or bringing somebody even into Rotary or something like that, if they give an important topic, I think a better speaker hands out a brief sheet of paper that says, here's what I talked about, maybe at the end, or here's where I'm going with this, because maybe not everybody was listening. We all listen, but we're also thinking about the ball game that was on last night, or we're thinking about this. And people never give you 100%. And so you want to say, all right, how do I make sure they got even 90% on what I'm talking about? So part of it comes back to, as we just said, questioning, asking questions. Did you get this? The other is to give them a different form of communication, which usually is in written form, but in some other way, so that if they aren't a good listener, if they didn't really understand, you put it down on a sheet of paper, here's where we're going. So you want to, it's kind of like double checking and going overboard, but then you've got a better sense of where you're trying to take the company.
And what would you leave listeners off with for someone starting in business? What are some tips you would recommend?
Well, I think it comes back to planning and making sure that your plan makes sense. Have you run your plan by other people? Have you developed a sense of where you're going? Now, the larger company, the $100 million company, has a board of directors, right? So they've got people that are looking over the company to kind of keep an eye on the CEO and the top officers to make sure things are incorporated, okay? Smaller companies can't afford a board of directors, and you don't have time for a board of directors. But what I encourage you, first of all the things that we've talked about today, good planning, developing a business plan, developing a strategic plan, all those things that you want to develop, and getting someone that can help you through that, getting somebody outside the business that'll walk you through it. When you get to a medium size, aren't ready for a board of directors yet, but you're medium size, put together your own board of directors in a different way. Why don't you get your banker, your insurance agent, if you've got a financial person, you got somebody who knows the industry, buy them lunch 3 or 4 times a year. Bring them together and lay out your plan. This is what I'm attempting to do. I bought your lunch, so you got a free lunch. Now give me an hour's worth of ideas. Attack my plan. Tell me what's wrong with this. Tell me how I can do it better. Tell me how to leverage it. So bring in, again, it comes back to your listening, bring in people outside of the business to help you go to the next level. And that can cover you all the way to the point where you can afford a board of directors, time-wise, money-wise, and everything else. But in the meantime, you're bringing in people. But you should be reviewing your plan. You talked when we first started about your banker and your banker. Have a plan that when you sit down with that banker, even if it's just for a $10,000 increase in a line of credit, that you can exhibit that you've got a plan and ask them for ideas. Always ask for ideas and see what they come up with to carry you forward.
I call them your board of advisors, and that is our accountants, our bankers, our leadership coaches, our business coaches, our anyone that's helping our company grow to the next level.
Have you ever brought them together into one meeting?
Never.
So think about it. They're all experts in their world. They all hear your idea, but imagine what it would be like if you had 4 of them around for an hour. And you don't want a ton of people. You want people that are going to be valuable to you. But you have 4 of them around for an hour and a half. And you give a half-hour presentation. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're doing. Now tear it apart and help me go to the next level. And ideas feed off each other. When you've got a group of 4 people around that are knowledgeable, that are in your interest, their ideas will feed the person next to them and everything. So think about that 4 times a year, twice a year. You bring this group together and you tell them, hey, I'm going to buy your lunch, or I'm going to buy you a nice dinner, I'll give you a bottle of wine, but I need your thoughts and ideas and response for an hour on what I'm attempting to do.
That's interesting. That reminds me of the book Principles from Ray Dalio. I'm reading it right now, and he talks about triangulating ideas with experts, and that leads to just massive levels of growth.
Right.
So
it's what my daughter's doing right now. She's in a world where she brings together philanthropy, business, individuals, and that type of thing to raise more money and ideas. 1 + 1 does equal 3 when you bring a few people together for an idea, and you're going to have even more of an idea, exactly with the book you're reading.
Yeah, I think that's super valuable in business, and a lot of very successful CEOs, the CEO of Zappos talks about how valuable it was to bounce ideas off people, all walks of life with different backgrounds, because they have a different perspective that you might not see.
And that's where I come back to. I called it networking, but taking, whether it's an hour a day or an hour a week, and I walk downtown a lot. So I'll walk into one of the stores or one of the restaurants or something. I don't typically even buy a beer or anything, but I'll sit down. Everybody knows me. I say hello to people. And I talk to people about ideas, and here's what I'm attempting to do. But taking that time, frankly, I think every day, but if you don't have every day, at least once a week, that you're out meeting with people, talking to them about what you're attempting to doing, and then listening to the ideas that they come back with.
Thank you, Brian, for coming. It was a pleasure having you on our podcast. Where can people find your services? Where can people book you for you to help them take their business to the next level?
Well, I do have a website. It's briankellyassociates.com, and it's BRIANKELLY associates.com. I've got, telephone number. The website's probably easiest because that's got my email. Telephone number is 707-363-1510. But shoot me an email, and I'm happy to bounce ideas around. If I can make it work, I might bounce you to somebody else and say, this would be a better person. I want to make sure that your time is well spent and not just wasting your time.
Again, thank you for being our guest, for sharing invaluable expertise and insights, and for being you. Your wealth of knowledge in consulting and CEO advisory service, strategy, and finance has truly brought value to everyone that's listening right now. So I just wanted to thank you again and appreciate everything you talked about and all the advice you're giving.
All right. And I'll see you at the next community event.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you.